Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful little fabric boxes. If you want to know more about this, do check out my chit chat video on this subject and I show you these and some other places that you can take this project. So I have a little cat in a box. He's sleeping away. Hopefully he's going to stay there, and I've got all my materials ready, so let's get going. So I taught these boxes a long time ago in real life, as they say these days, and I've actually got a set of instructions for it. It's a complete set of instructions on how to make these boxes. I'm going to give you that for free. I'm going to put it on the free stuff page of the website, so you can use these instructions. It's got the templates as well that you'll need for this box I'm going to show you today, so you can go and download that from the free stuff page, and you can use that in conjunction with this video if you want to have a go at making one of these boxes. So I'm going to show you how to make this box. So it's a box on the outside with a little bag on the inside. I've also got this box, which I mentioned in that chit chat video, which is the one I made on my apprenticeship, which is a little bit more complicated. It's got an extra step to make a box inside as well. I'm not going to make that box, but we do have measurements for that one on the free stuff page as well. And so I will run through that and tell you how you can make it with the inside box if you want to make that version. So for this version, you're going to need some materials. So I'm just going to run through them quickly and then I'll go over them in a bit more detail as we actually get to use it. So the first thing you're going to need is some card to make your box out of. Now this is mount board, mount card. So this is the card that would be used when you frame a picture and you put a mount over the picture. So this bit goes around the edge. So it's a little bit more solid. It's a really nice sturdy card. It comes in lots of different colours. I suggest white for this project so you can clearly see what you're doing. So you can buy this from art shops or framers, picture framers. I got mine in a pack of mount board. Comes in A4, which is kind of letter size if you're in the US. This came from WH Smith's. If you're in the UK, you will know that WH Smith doesn't exist anymore. Now TJ Jones, and as we're filming, they're still selling this, so you can get it there in a pack of board. It's 1400 microns, which is about 1.5 millimeters, so 1.4 millimeters thick. So you can get it from there. You can get it from the range as well if you're in the UK, or look online for mount boards 1400 microns. This one is acid free as well, which means it'll be a bit better if you want it to last a bit longer. So there's lots of different places you can get this mount board. The thickness is quite important, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we go. You're also going to need some fabrics. Now I suggest cotton fabrics. Quilting cottons are really good for this project. Try not to use anything too wacky or too weird and wonderful, because it's quite hard to cover the card and get an accurate box. These boxes depend all on accurate cutting and accurate assembling to get a beautiful fitting box. Quilting cottons are great, and if you want two different colours, one for the outside and one for the inside, you can get a nice contrasting colour there. That's good. So you can have a patterned one, got some cute little beach huts on there, and you can have a plain one with it. That looks quite nice if you want contrasting. So a patterned one and a plain one. I've got spots and quite bright colours, so I've picked up the colour in the fabric with something else. So if you can get kind of matching one, that's quite nice. Ones with motifs on are nice. You can use the motif in your box, so you can use that shape there and cover the card in that shape. So it's great if you've got a stash of quilting cottons. You can go and have a delve around there, see what you can find, because you can use the different elements to make your box with. You can again do a plain one with it. You can have a pattern one with a plain lining. You could do it plain on the outside and then have the pattern inside if you want to. Want a little bit of contrast. You can get some beautiful quilting panels like this, which are made for making quilts with, but can you imagine a box made with those on either side? So you could make a big tall box rather than a square one, and you could have a little panel on each side of the box. So you really can do lots of really fun things with these boxes. Once you know the technique and how to put it together, then you can fill your boots experimenting and trying some different things with some different fabrics. And of course you can do some embroidery on your boxes as well. So you could stitch your piece of fabric first and then you can cover your card with your embroidery. So I've just had a little look in my selection of embroideries that I've got, so videos that I have done on the YouTube channel, and found these things. So I've found my little elephant. He would look really lovely. So we're going to wrap the card with the fabric. So he's actually good size. He would make amazing lid to the box. So you could pull out something that you've already made if you want to, see if that fits. And then just running through a few videos that we've done in the past, thought these things would look really lovely. So these are our little embroidered wreaths, a little embroidered flower wreaths. Struggling to say that. And one of these on each side of the box would be absolutely stunning. You could do a little felt leaf on each side of the box. Just do one panel on a different leaf around the box. You've got our trees, of course, our 5 different trees. You could have a little tree box. We've got 10 embroidered flowers, our most popular video to date. And you could just choose your favourite flowers and do one of those on each panel around the box, and maybe something really spectacular on the top. And there's our silk ribbon flowers as well, which would look lovely on the box. So there's lots of ideas for you there to do either a plain box, if you like, they do look beautiful, or just the fabric round, or if you want to put your embroidery on, you can. Lots of different ideas, just a few of them there for you. You could just put the embroidery on the top and do plain around the side. So tons of ideas just to give you a little insight as to where you can go. But let's just look at the box and how to construct it, because once you do that, you can do that part, then you can go away and play. So this is the box I'm going to make with you today, and I just want to emphasize at this point that I've done all my measurements in metric. It's just something I'm more familiar with, and it's much easier to get it really accurately. So if you can do it in metric, you will find this much easier to get your box together. So on that free PDF, I've got every piece of the box that you need. So we've got the lid, we've got both sides, we've got the back of the box, we've got the base of the box and the front of the box, and everything's got the measurement written on it to the millimetre. So what you will need to do is to cut out all of these pieces for your box out of your mount board first. So it's helpful to print this sheet off because we're going to need that again in a minute. So I'm just going to show you how to cut my card. Now, I'm not going to dive into my piece of card that I showed you because I've got some leftovers from a previous box that I've made. So I'm going to use those up. So great time to use those little scraps of card. And sometimes you can buy these in art shops. They're from the middle of the mount card and they do them in a little pack and they sell the middles off. So that's a good place to get your card if you want some pieces. So I've mentioned the card that you will need and the fabrics, but you're going to need some other materials as well to make this box. So I'm just going to run through those now. So we're going to need to cut our card up. So I suggest a cutting mat or a piece of wood will work if you don't have a cutting mat. A very sharp knife. You can't cut this card with scissors, you need a sharp knife. So either a Stanley knife or a craft knife will work absolutely fine, but please make sure the blade is really sharp so you can cut through your cardboard. So we're going to need to measure our card as well. So we're going to need a ruler and a pencil, and then I suggest a metal ruler for cutting. Don't cut with your plastic rulers because you'll ruin your rulers. So a metal ruler for cutting your card. We're going to use a little bit of double-sided tape. This won't touch the outside of the box. It just helps us to secure the fabric on the inside of the box. So that's really useful to have some of that. And then you're going to need some thread. So some sewing thread that matches your fabric, and then the needle I suggest is a curved needle. It's much easier with a curved needle. If you have one of those and you can manage one of those, you can do it with a straight one, but I do recommend a curved needle for this. So I've got my pieces of card ready, so let's cut out one of the shapes. So let's start with the lid. So I'm going to cut it 6.1 centimetres by 6.1 centimetres. Now this cutting mat does have markings on it, but I need a 0.1 of a centimetre, so I'm going to do it with this quilting ruler just because I can see through it. So just going to make sure that that's nice and lined up there. Be as accurate as you can with this. This bit's really important. I'm going to put 2 marks. So I've done 6.1 centimetres that side, 6.1 that side, and I can just join up those 2 marks. Now you want a nice accurate line, so I'm using one of these mechanical pencils because it's got a nice fine point to it, or just make sure you sharpen your normal pencil if you're using a normal pencil. So that measurement is 6.1, and I'm actually going to write that on the card. Now it's 6.1 square. They're not all square, so do just double check those measurements. So 6.1 again, so I'm going to now go along that line, measure 6.1 that side, 6.1 that side, and join up those 2 lines. Now if you're using scrap bits of cardboard, just make sure that this is a straight edge here. You've got at least one straight edge to measure off. This should be a 90-degree corner here, so our pieces are nice and square. So I'm going to write 6.1 centimetres that way. So I've got my measurement that way, I've got my measurement that way, and I'm also going to write which part it is. So I'm going to write the lid on there. Now that's really important that you do that, because they're all slightly different, and once you've cut your pieces of card they all look the same. So make sure you write which part it is in the middle of that card, so when we cover it with fabric we will still know which piece it is. Okay, so we're going to cut this out now. So I'm going to use my metal ruler for this, and you'll notice I'm putting the ruler on the piece of card I want to keep. If I put it that side and cut here, and my knife slips, I've cut the card I want. So ruler on the bit that you want to keep, right on that edge there. And the trick with cutting this is, because you've got a nice sharp blade, let the blade do the cutting. So don't need to press really hard with your knife, press quite hard with your ruler, but just lots of fine scores with your knife, and it will let the blade do the work. The blade will cut through it. You don't need to put lots of weight on it. That's when you slip, and then you can hurt yourself if you're not careful. So just keep doing it till the blade goes through the cardboard. And you can feel when that blade's gone through, you can feel it's soft on this. So I can take my ruler away, and I've got a nice sharp cut. So then I'm just going to turn it the other way and do the same again. So ruler on the part I want to keep, and then lots of fine cuts until the blade goes through the cardboard. So I've got my lid ready to go, all nice, neatly cut to those sizes. And just a quick word about that: if you're not confident about cutting, or if you've not done it before, do one piece at a time, then you've got another piece, and then draw mark on the measurements for your second piece. If you're confident, you can do those together. You can draw this one on here, whichever your next one is, with your ruler, and you can do one cut for both pieces. I would say do that when you get a bit more confidence with cutting. Otherwise, do them separately, draw the next one, so you don't risk cutting into both pieces. So once you've cut out all of your pieces of card, then I suggest you place them in position on your printout so you know what's what. So there's my side, and you'll notice for this one I've put an arrow. So this is the bottom of the box, this is the top of the box. I put my measurements on, but just saves me checking. A little arrow will help you with that. So there's the other side, arrow up. This is the way up the card is going to go. The front is that way up also. Then I've got my lid, that's got 4 arrows on it because that's going to go on the top of my box, so that doesn't matter, and it's 6 by 1 by 6 by 1. And then I've got my base is also the same size, and then the back is also that way up. This is the bottom, this is the top. So I've got them in position, and I've got them where they're going to fit together, and I've got them the right way up. So I suggest you keep them like that so that you know how to assemble your box once the pieces are covered. So what we're going to do now is cover our pieces of card. So these are the bits of fabric I've got. I'm going for a little mix of lots of different fabrics. So this is an opportunity to use up some little pieces if you want to. It doesn't have to be all colour coordinated and all beautifully coordinated. I've got a kind of a theme going on here with sort of some nice prints, some flowery prints. So I'm going to use those to cover my pieces with. I'm going to do every piece differently. So this is what we are aiming to achieve. We're going to cover the card with the fabric so it's nice and tight, and then we're going to sew those together. So I'm going to cover my lid and show you how I do that. Now I have found that it's best just to cut off the very corners of these. These are quite sharp, and when you put the fabric around the card tightly, these can poke through the card. So I'm just going to get my knife, and it really is just the very tip of the corner, just a tiny little bit. It just takes that sharp edge off, just the tiniest little bit, just to take the sharp edge off so it doesn't poke through the fabric. So let's find our first piece of fabric, and I'll show you how to cover this. So I'm going to use this little bit of fabric with some roses in the middle. So I want the roses to sit in the middle of my piece of card. So I'm just going to place them in position. So if it is important where your motif sits, just check it's the right way up. If you're doing like the front panel, you want your roses upright, not upside down, and just check that's in the middle. So the right way up and in the middle, and then I'm just going to turn that over. And then if you want to, you can just use your pencil to mark on where that goes. Just very light pencil marks around the card, just so I know that that flower is in the middle when I come to cut my fabric out. So we're going to wrap the fabric around the board. Now this is too much fabric, so I'm going to trim it down so to about a centimetre and a half all the way around the card. So I've cut my fabric down, so it's going to be much easier to fold. Now don't worry about being too accurate with that, because just as long as you've got enough to fold over the side there, we're not going to see this bit later. So the other thing you can do is just cut the corners off. And then just double check if it's important. For the lid it doesn't matter because it's square, so we can go either way round. But if you're covering the front, just make sure if it's got an arrow on it and the motif needs to be in a particular direction, that it's going the right way. So just double check that now. Nothing more annoying than sticking it down and it's not the right way round. So now we're going to need our double-sided sticky tape. And I'm just going to put a little bit in each corner of the square. Now don't use your best embroidery scissors for this because it will blunt them. So I'm just going to use a pair of scissors that I use to cut paper with. And then I'm just going to put a little square of that right in each corner of the card. And you'll notice I've got my writing on the inside. Don't put it on the outside because if your fabric's a little bit see-through, you might see the writing through. So writing on the inside so you can see which part it is until you sew it together as well. So that's doubly important that you do that. So then just peel off the backings for your corners. Place in position. And then all I'm going to do is just fold that corner over and stick it down onto that little bit of double-sided. So this just helps to secure this fabric in place. It's on the back of the card, it's not touching the fabric, or if you had embroidery on the front, it's not touching your embroidery at any moment. So I would normally steer clear of anything sticky, but in this instance it's really helpful to use it and it's not going to harm the fabrics or the embroidery in any way, so I'm happy to use it. So I'm just sticking my corners down, so that'll give me nice neat corners. Then we're just going to stick these down as well. So it's going to be a piece of double-sided along here, go over the top of the fabric that you already stuck down in the corners. You can either put all the sticky down in one go and then peel it off, or you can do one at a time. So I should do one at a time. And then I'm going to fold this over the top. Now pull it fairly tight around there, nice and snug around that board, and then just stick that down there. And then we're going to sew the corners up together, and then when we sew the box together, the sewing will be what holds it together. So this sticky tape is just going to hold it until we can actually sew it. So I'm going to do the same with the other three sides. So last side, and you can really pull now across there. You can see how stretchy that fabric is, even though it's only cotton. And then I'm just going to pull that tightly around and just stick that down across there. So I've stuck all four sides. I can still see which part it is, and if it's got arrows on it, which way up it goes. And then that's nice and tight on the front. Nice smooth finish. So we're going to do one more thing. We're just going to sort the corners out before we sew it to the next part. So these corners don't quite close, and the box will be much nicer and go together much more easily if this is sewn up. So I'm just going to do that now. So I've got an ordinary sewing cotton. Now I suggest you use something that's going to disappear a bit. So use a cream if you're using a creamy kind of fabric. I'm just going to use red so that you can see what I'm doing, but do use one that matches. So I'm just going to put a knot in the end of it. And all I'm going to do is just pick up a little bit of that corner, go over to the other side and pick up a bit of that, and I'm just sewing across that corner. It's just going to pull those two bits of fabric together. Just cut off that tail end there, and then just go right up to the corner, sewing through those two bits. Just pull it together, and can you see how the corner comes into a nice tight square corner? So you might be tempted to skip this bit, but it will help later on when you come to sew it together. So I do recommend just spending the time to do that. It doesn't take long to do it at all. You can just whip round the corners and do it as you do cover each piece of card, and then you're not leaving it all to the end. So when you've covered your piece of card, then I suggest you put it back on your template, so you know you've done that one, and every time you do one, just put it back on the template and cover each one at a time. Make sure it's the right way up. So now what you need to do is to do the same with all of your pieces of card. Get them all covered and get all of those corners sewn up ready to stitch together. So once you've covered all your pieces of card, we can start to sew them together. So I suggest you start with the back one and the base. The reason for this is they're roughly the same size. I say roughly, it's a millimetre out, and I'll explain why in a second. So 6 centimetres across here and across here. And what happens with, if I just show you on this box, that every side is actually going to sit on top of the base, so you'll be able to see the base underneath it. So these panels all sit on top of that. That's quite important because that will tell you where to put all of your panels. So if I take the back and the base for now, I'll come back to those in a second. So this back panel here is going to sit on top of the base. If I just turn it like that, you'll be able to see the colour of the base underneath. It doesn't go like that. It goes on top of it like that, so that's quite important. And the reason the base is just a little bit wider than the other ones is because it's the bottom. It's nice just to make sure that it does actually stick out of the bottom. It's only 1 millimetre, but that's just going to make sure that that just stays the base and everything lines up nicely. If I make it exactly the same size and one of them is a little bit out, the base is actually a little bit smaller. So just to ensure the base is a little bit bigger, the lid is the same, just a touch bigger, not very much. But that just makes sure that they actually will meet all of the sides. So it's going to sit on the top of that there like that. So there's my base, my back, make sure that's the right way up. This is the bottom, that's the top. It's going to go on like that. So I'm going to sew those together. We're going to sew them, so that one goes on top of there. I'm going to sew them down this seam here. So this is where your curved needle comes in really handy. Now you can do it with a straight one. It's going to be a little bit fiddly, but we're going to do really small stitches, so you can probably manage with a straight one. But if you've got a curved one, it'll be much better. If you're not used to using curved needles, then do go and check out our video in the needles playlist about using these. There's a particular way of using them, and once you get the hang of it, they're absolutely amazing, especially for a project like this. So they are worth getting to grips with if you can. So it's a little bit awkward just to start it off. So what I'm going to do is start my needle underneath in the back one. And I'm going to come into this corner. I'm going to come up right in the corner with my curved needle. Now I'm using a double thread here. And again, use one that's going to match your fabric. Now I'm stitching a cream one with a red one, so it doesn't really matter which one I use. And hopefully these will all be invisible. But do double that thread up. You just want something that's a little bit stronger for this, because this is what's going to hold the box together. So another double check that got that on the right way, so that red one is visible at the bottom. Now it's a bit awkward getting it going, so I've come out of the corner of my cream one and I'm going to put the needle in and then I'll show you. I think that's the best way to do it. Okay, so I've just put the needle in the red one where I want the thread to sit. So if you'll notice, I'm going to point here, so it's coming this side of the card, not this side. Don't bring it out here because the threads ain't got to go all the way across here. So it's going to be thread in here, thread in here, thread in the white, thread in the red. So I'll do a couple of stitches so you can see. So a stitch from the corner to here on the red, then I go straight across into the cream and take a little stitch with my needle. So I'm just going to do this ladder stitch. So now I come across to the other side and I just take a little stitch with the curved needle. Because it's curved, I just let the curve of the needle bring that point out. Pull that tight and you can see the stitch disappears. So you shouldn't be able to see any of this. So now I just come in the corner. So I'm not going through the card, I'm just going through that edge of that fabric there. But pull them nice and tight, but just make sure you come opposite each time. Just take a little stitch there. So a little stitch in the red, little stitch in the white, opposite each other. And if you want to just do it with a straight needle, I suggest you do it like you would patchwork. Just pick up a little bit of the fabric from each and just over sew it. So you're just going to go round and round. So you'll see this stitch more than the one I'm doing, but it is an alternative if you don't have a curved needle. So just do your stitches supinate, but this way this stitch will actually disappear. So come right up to this corner. And just to make the corners extra strong, because they can be a little bit delicate, I'm going to go back again the other way. So back in that cream fabric and then back again towards the corner. So I'm just sort of doing a double stitch there to give that a bit of extra strength. And then you can see how that's now stitched together. So that white one's on top of the red. You can see a line of the red. And you can see how firmly that's stitched. So if you do nice small stitches and pull them really tightly, this is quite a good join. It's a very strong join. And then we're going to use this thread to add the next piece of card on. Okay, so we've got the back on top of the base. So now I'm going to put the side on. So there is my arrow on the side. It goes up, so that goes towards the top, like so. So we're going to stitch it in two places. So I'm going to stitch it to that one and I've got to stitch it to this one, but I'm just going to check the fit first. So this should also sit on top of that red one. So it doesn't go at the side there. It goes on top of it. Like that. And then that bottom comes around it like that. So everything is going to sit on top of that red one. So it can be a little bit fiddly to get these together, and just until you've got a couple in place. I'm holding this here, so if you want to try and just get a pin in that and pin it to there, just to hold that corner, that will just give you a little bit of extra help there. And then I'm going to sew down here, so it doesn't really matter if you go along the bottom or up the side first. So I'm going to go up the side, just double check the fit, so this meets nicely at the top. And then we're just going to do exactly the same as we've done. So using that same thread, so I need to come out along here. So I'm going to stitch along here. So I'm going to bring my thread right out in that corner there. And then the same as before, pick up a little stitch in this fabric. Till I've got that first one in, it's just a little bit hard to hold. So just take your time doing this, there's no hurry. Once you get going on it, it gets easy. The more pieces you sew in, the more stable the box is to hold. So it is a little bit fiddly at first, but just take your time. Put those stitches in as neatly as you can. So I've got the base, the back, I've sewn up here for the side, so now I'm going to sew the side onto the base. I'm going to sew that back down there, and then we've got half of the box done, so then it's just the other side and the front to put on. So do those in exactly the same way until we've got the shell of the outside of the box. So once you've sewn all your sides together, you will get the outside of your box like that, so the outer lining of your box. So this is a different colour. This is one that I've already made, so I'm going to carry on showing you the next part with this one, but it's exactly the same as the one I've just been showing you. So it's easier now to put the lining in the box and then to put the lid on afterwards. So I'm going to show you the lining, then I'll show you the lid. So this is the lining. I'm just going to make a little very simple bag for it. I'm going to gather it up and we're going to sew it around the inside, and then we can put the lid on to hold it shut. So size of fabric you need, it needs to be a minimum of this measurement plus this measurement plus this measurement plus a couple of centimetres to turn it in on the inside out. So 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 centimetres. So this one's about 20. This piece of fabric that I'm going to use for the inside, it's about 20 centimetres. And we just need to make this into a circle. So all I'm going to do is fold it in half. So if you cut your fabric to the right size square, and then you can just keep folding it in half like so. And then you can cut around here to make it circular. So we're cutting the points off basically. And then when I open that up, you should have a circle. Like so, and then we're just going to run a gathering stitch all the way around the outside. So I've got a buttonhole thread here, something a little bit stronger, and you can just run a gathering stitch. So come a couple of centimetres in, maybe about that far, 1.5 centimetres in from the edge, and just run this all the way around the outside. So I'm keeping it on the reel, not cutting that. I'm going to run this thread around here, so when I get to here I can pull it and I can gather it up. So I've been all the way around. I've got both ends now on the same side, and I can just pull them up. So I just need to find out which is the right side of my fabric. So the right side is going to be inside, so pull these threads up on the outside, and if you pull the long one that's still attached to the reel, that's this one, gather it all up, then you're not wasting all of that thread. Gathered it up, and then I can just snip that off there. And I've got my little bag, so you'll need to just spend a bit of time evening out those gathers. So even them out roughly like so. I've not tied these ends up yet. Then I'm going to get my box and I'm going to stuff that inside the box. Then you can tie these two ends up. So just do one tie, just do one overhand knot so you can adjust it, and then you're going to fiddle with these gathers. So what you need to do is you need to fold over that excess and you need to fold it inside. So it's going to go between the bag inside and the outside of the box. So go around and fold all of that in like so. And then just spend a minute or so just adjusting this. Just pull it a little bit tighter, pull those two ends a little bit tighter if you need the bag a little bit smaller. So it does take a bit of fiddling this stage. So just take your time to do this, and you can use a couple of pins as well. If you want to pin into the corner, you can just pin through the bag and into the fabric in the box, and you've got the corner held. Then you can do this corner here. Making sure that excess is all folded inside. And go around the corners until you've got all of those gathers all sorted and all nice and neatly and even inside the box. So I've pinned it in the corners and in the middle, and I've just pushed the pin through that lining and into the fabric on the covered piece of card just to hold it in place. So it's a little bit fiddly, that spend the time to get that right. It's just about evening out those gathers really. So I'm going to use my curved needle again and a sewing thread, so either the buttonhole thread we just did, or you can use a double thread, whichever you would like. And all I'm going to do, let's take that pin out, is a little bit of the fabric in the edge and then a little bit of the fabric in the gathers. And just sew the gathered part to the box. So I'll just put the needle in and then I'll bring it to the camera so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm not going right to the very top of the box, just inside there, just to leave a little bit of space on the top. And that's pulling that fabric to the edge. So now I'm in the box, I'll take another little bit of the gather. So a bit in the box, a bit in that inside gathered part, and then just go around the whole box like that, just sewing the inside lining to the outer box. So when you've done that, this is what you get. So go back to a little orange one here. So you can just see the gathered edge there, and just sewn underneath. Don't go right to the top. Just sew underneath and just sew that lining to the box. So you've just got that little bag in there instead. And then what we can do is just put our lid on. So there's a couple of ways of doing the lid. So this one I've just put a lining on it. So there's my lid panel off my other box, and you can just take a little bit of fabric, you can fold it in, you can put a bit of felt in it if you want a little bit of a padded lid in there, and you can just fold your fabric around it and you can place that in the centre of the lid. And then you can just slip stitch all the way around that, like we have done to put our box pieces together and to put our lining in. So you can do that way if you want to, which is the way this one is done. Or if you want to do another way, you can actually do another piece of card. So you could put your felt on top of your card. You don't need the felt at all if you don't want to, and you can just cover that the same way that we've covered the box pieces. And then you could sew that on top of there as well. So this will give you a slightly more raised effect. I'll show you on the grey one. So that will give you this effect. If you just want to put your lining in, it will get this effect. So either one is absolutely fine. And then you can put your lid on the edge of your box, and then you can sew along here, just as you did for the sides, just to make your hinge so that then the lid shuts nicely on the box. If you want to put a little clasp on it to finish it, you can do. I've just put a little button on the front and then just attached a little bit of, this is rick-rack, you can put a little bit of ribbon or whatever you like under the seam there, and then you can just tie the box if you want the lid to shut. So there's lots of different ways you can do that, or you can just leave the lid to open, whichever you want, way you want. So lots of different ways you can do this. Don't forget, all the instructions are on that PDF. You can follow along with the video and use the instructions as well to give you some extra information. Okay, so I've shown you how to make this one. I'm going to run through this one very quickly if you want to know how to do this extra stage, because basically we're going to make another box that goes inside the outer box. So I'm just going to run through that one with you now. So there is a separate set of instructions to make this little box. That's on the free stuff page as well for you to download. So this is the 6 by 6 centimetre box. This is a 5 centimetre square box, but you make it in exactly the same way for the outer part. So there's your set of measurements that you need, as we've just shown you for the outer part there, but you'll find you've got another page as well, and this is for some inner pieces. So we're going to make 2 boxes. One fits inside the other. So this box fits in here. This is the outer box here. So I suggest you make the outer box first from your measurements, as I said, exactly the same way. And then when you come to make the inner box, just check your pieces fit first. So cut all these fabrics and cover all these with your fabrics and sew it together. Then just check the card pieces that actually fit inside. Allow a little bit extra for the thickness of the material going over. So just make sure it's a slightly loose fit. If it doesn't, just trim them down until you can get that in and out easily if there was some fabric on top of it. So you can see here the sizes. So here's your lid, the 2 sides and the back. So here's your sizes again for these. So these will be a little bit smaller than your outer boxes, and then this dotted bit here is another layer as well. So this is a felt layer. So if you wanted to put a little bit of felt padding in here, you can do that as well. And you can see there it just stops here, and this is padded as well, and when I shut that, that all fits on top of there. So it is just another layer that you can add to your boxes if you want to make them really special. You can make this little layer of padding for your lid to sit on, and it's all padded nicely inside. If you wanted to put some jewellery in there, that's got a nice padded inside as well. So the dotted part is your felt pieces, so you can cut your cardboard to these measurements here, and then your felt pieces to the same size as the card. But you'll just notice here that there's a little lip here. So if that's my base there, and my felt's just going to sit inside it there. So it says at the top, all felt pieces are the same size, 4.2 by 4.2. So you can just cut all your felt pieces the same size, but they do go in different positions. So for the base, it just sits inside. For the back, it meets the bottom there, but there's a gap all the way around here. So just make sure you put your felt in the right places. You can use a little bit of your double-sided tape just in the middle there, just to hold the felt in place, but then you cover it exactly the same way that you have done before. So your fabric goes on top of the felt and you cover it around the back, and then your sticky side goes on the back of the card there. Again, make sure you can see your measurements, so do it that way around. So make sure that your felt is underneath your fabric and not on the back of the card. So you cover those with the felt and then with the fabric, and then you sew it together exactly the same way as you did before. Just double check at each stage that this fits inside this, because if you did all that sewing and it didn't fit, it would be really annoying. So just double check that these fit as you're making it, and then you can just push that box inside the outer one, and then you can just sew all the way around here. And then I suggest you put your lid on afterwards. So just another stage, just something else that you can do with your box if you want to take it to the next level. Okay, so I did tell you that was a marathon video. There's a lot going on in there. Ginger Cat's still fast asleep. He's not woken up while I've been doing that. In his own little box there. So you can make a cat box if you wanted to make a huge big one. Make a posh cat box. So there's lots of other things that you can do with it. Check out the chit chat video for a look at some of these to see where you can take this and other shapes that you can make and other things that you can put inside your boxes as well. So lots more information in that chit chat video. Do go and check that one out. So I hope you enjoyed that little box making session. Don't forget, both of those free PDFs are available for you on the free stuff page of our website. The links to those are in the description below this video. And if you want to see the ultimate in box making, do check out my Princess and the Pea Bed. You can see the video all about that up here. And if you really want to get to grip with your curved needles, you can check out this video down here. It tells you all about that. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. I'll see you next time.